Greetings, intrepid explorers, brace yourselves for a hair-raising journey as we step into the crumbling halls of St. Elizabeth's Hospital, a once prestigious institution with a storied past. I'm Golden Ticket to History, and today we unearth the secrets woven into the very fabric of this abandoned asylum in the heart of Washington, D.C. Founded in 1855, St. Elizabeth's Hospital was a pioneering institution dedicated to the treatment of mental illness. Its imposing architecture and sprawling grounds spoke of an era long past. Over the decades, it sheltered countless souls, including prominent figures such as poet Ezra Pound and John Hinckley Jr., the man behind the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. More about that later on. As we wander through these dilapidated corridors, we can't ignore the echoes of Ezra Pound's creativity and despair. What demons did he battle within these very walls? How did the confinement influence the words that would be later pour from his pen? Join us as we connect with the literary spirit of this once celebrated, now forgotten resident. St. Elizabeth was not immune to the controversial medical practices of its time. From crude psychiatric treatments to the infamous lobotomy procedure, this asylum witnessed it all. The cold, sterile rooms bear witness to the experimentation and ethical dilemmas faced by both doctors and patients. How did these practices shape the fate of those seeking refuge within these austere walls? Only time will tell. In the evenings here at St. Elizabeth, this now decrepit hospital falls into a paranormal side. Locals speak of restless spirits and spectral phenomena. Reports range from flickering lights to ghostly figures that seem to linger in the shadows. What stories do these spirits carry, and why do they remain tethered to this place long after its abandonment? Only they know the truth. It's been on one of my missions to take and go and walk through the hollowed halls of one of these old decrepit buildings. Be able to walk where so much history took place here in the nation's capital. It was definitely something that was on my bucket list when I was making my list of places I wanted to go to. This location was definitely at the top of the list. I wanted to cover places that had rich histories. I wanted to cover places that had crazy stories. I wanted to cover places that had true crime aspects to them, as well as haunted histories, in addition to political and other famous elements. And I believe this structure, carried all of those. It had famous residents. It is a historical building in a historical city with its historical rich past, controversial just as much as the epicenter a few miles away. This place was not without controversy, but I think it's what makes it so unique. As you can see, there's still remnants, there's still artifacts, there's still resources and information left over from when it was abandoned, which begs the question, should these resources have been taken away? Should they have not been left behind? These slide discs, any of these platelets used for, reviewing of specimens, any records. You would think that all these things would have been taken away when the hospital closed, but clearly they have not. Is this normal? Does things like these get left whenever hospitals close? I've been to one other property once before, back in Orlando, and the structure was already gone, so the hospital was gone. It was just some remnants from the old basements, as well as a few other elements left over, so there wasn't really anything to go off in relations to that. But I had heard stories and seen pictures where there was artifacts, people's patient information, and other references and resources and items left behind when the hospital closed. So it must not be too out there. I don't know if someone of my loved one or my own personal information was left behind. I would be kind of not very happy with that. I don't know. As we travel through this now abandoned hospital, you see there's still some remnants of the time when it was a hospital. Some of the Autopsy theaters are still in place. The morgue is still in place. Many of the treatment rooms, interview rooms, and other remnants are still in place when this was a hospital. St. Elizabeth's was not only reserved for would-be assassins and poets, but also many other prominent celebrities and political and social figures. One of the most prominent residents being that of a silent film era star, Mary Fuller. Mary Fuller was very prominent during the silent film era, the early beginnings of the 20th century, and unfortunately she suffered from a nervous breakdown in 1940 after her mother passed away. It was 7 years after this moment that she found herself being hospitalized in St. Elizabeth's, and she stayed there until 1973 when she passed away. Another prominent resident was Charles Guiteau. Guiteau didn't actually spend any time in St. Elizabeth's, but he would if Dr. Charles Nichols and Dr. Williams Golding had their way. Nichols and Golding, the first two superintendents of St. Elizabeth's, testified that Guiteau, the lawyer who shot and killed President James Garfield in 1881, was in fact insane and not fit to stand trial. The court decided otherwise and sentenced Guiteau to death. Guiteau certainly seemed a bit deranged. During his trial, he insulted the judge and solicited legal advice from spectators in the courtroom. He also appealed to Chester Arthur, who became president after Garfield died, by pointing out that his deed had helped raise his salary from a mere $8,000 at the time to over $50,000. So yeah, another interesting person tied to St. Elizabeth's. One of the most famous residents to call St. Elizabeth's home did so in an unusual, unorthodox fashion. That person would be Benito Mussolini. And he was a resident here. Well, his brain tissue was, anyway. Ezra Pound, who talked about earlier, was a famous poet who was also a huge, prominent fan of Mussolini, holding a radio show throughout the United States during his time period. He would have been very pleased to know that he technically shared the walls with such a prominent figure in his eyes. And this happened at least for part of his time at St. Elizabeth's, as a sliver of one of his hero's brains was housed nearby. After Mussolini was executed in April of 1945, an autopsy was performed and 2 samples of his brain tissues were sent to the United States. One of these samples went to the Army Institute of Pathology, and the others went to St. Elizabeth's, where Dr. Winifred Overhalser, the superintendent of St. Elizabeth's at the time, studied the sample for evidence that Mussolini had suffered from paresis brought on by syphilis. However, these tests that he conducted came back negative. While the Army returned its sample to Mussolini's family in 1966, the whereabouts of St. Elizabeth's sample is shrouded in mystery. There's a chance maybe his tissues still exist in some of these slides that we see floating around here on property. Maybe it's in a jar somewhere, it's buried under some rubble. Only time will know. Only history will know. Be interesting to find out, though. What do you think? Put down in the comments below. Do you think that Mussolini's brain tissue still exists here at St. Elizabeth's? And maybe because his tissue is here, is there some more connection here? I don't know. Let down in the comments below. Our journey through the haunted history of Elizabeth merely scratches the surface. Stay tuned as we continue to peel back the layers of forgotten stories in our quest for the truth. Remember to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until our next adventure, stay curious, stay bold, and keep exploring the mysteries that time forgot. As always, continue with history and film. Catch you guys in the next video.